UFC 302, Makhachev versus Poirier. The lightweight belt is on the line this weekend in New Jersey. We got a really solid card around it. Let's go ahead and break it down. Starting off with a flyweight matchup between Mitch Raposo and Andre Lima. Lima missed weight pretty badly. He was about 4 pounds over the flyweight limit. He's been pretty promising from what I've seen of him so far in his career. Obviously, he's the guy who got bit and capitalized off of that by getting it tatted and really milked that for all it was worth. But in the cage, I think he's already big to begin with. He's going to be even bigger now. Athletic. He's taking on Mitch Raposo, who I don't know much about. Lost to Jake Hadley in the Contender Series, who's kind of underwhelmed so far. I think those extra pounds are going to be huge for Lima. I'm taking him to win a decision here. Next up is a women's bantamweight fight between Ailin Perez and Joselyne Edwards. Edwards looks to be a bit bigger, definitely taller. Was able to make weight, though it looked like she had a bit more trouble getting down there than Ailin Perez. I like Perez's aggressiveness in this matchup, though. She should land a lot of takedowns here. Edwards is a fighter who we've seen on her back a decent amount. She's gotten taken down in a lot of her matchups. I'm taking Perez to win this one by decision. Just top pressure, and I can't really see Edwards being able to stand up. Next fight is a welterweight matchup between Gall and Bassil Hafez. Hafez should dominate this fight. Gall hardly ever fights. He's kind of, if you look at his resume, he's got wins over Sage Northcutt and CM Punk. Those are pretty much the best wins on his resume. The guy's been super inactive really throughout his UFC career. Probably fights once, if not less than once per year if you average it all out, especially as of recently. It feels like the UFC is kind of throwing Hafez a bone here after taking that short notice matchup versus JDM. Guy who no one wanted to fight, but who Hafez probably gave the hardest matchup to date. I think Hafez is going to win this one by submission, though. Gall's got a couple of his own submissions, but I think Hafez is just on another level in the grappling. I think he's going to be a lot stronger and just a lot more tapped in, to be honest. Next fight is a welterweight matchup versus Phil Rowe and Jake Matthews. Matthews is coming off of a loss to Michael Morales. Pretty close fight, but we saw him struggle a lot with the reach of Morales. Well, here comes Phil Rowe, who's got an even longer reach. And I think he's got the power to give Jake Matthews some issues. We've seen Jake Matthews sort of struggle against some power punchers in the past. It's going to be a stand-up fight. And I think Jake Matthews is good boxing, but I think Phil Rowe is just going to use that length and that power to really separate himself. And I can see him getting a KO here, giving Jake Matthews his second KO loss ever. It just feels like Phil Rowe has the tools to frustrate Matthews. And if Matthews takes extra risks to try and get in close, I could see him getting caught and put out. Next fight up is a lightweight matchup between Grant Dawson and Joe Solecki. Dawson, big favorite here. It's going to be a wrestling match. Both these guys love grappling. Dawson's definitely the better wrestler of these two, though. I think he's going to be all over him. Solecki is, he's shown to be pretty opportunistic in the grappling department. If you give up your back to him, he's shown the ability to take advantage and end fights. But I just don't really see Grant Dawson putting himself in any sort of precarious position. It will be interesting to see how Dawson does against a grappler of Solecki's caliber in the lightweight division. Grant Dawson did spend a lot of time at 145, but I think he's got the tools to pretty much handle business here and win by submission. Next up is a heavyweight fight between Jailton Almeida and Alexandr Romanov. Pretty sure this fight got relegated to the prelims, and I'm not complaining. Almeida has put up a couple stinkers in a row. Of course, he had that fight versus Derek Lewis that was just brutal to watch. And then took on Curtis Blades, a fight where I said this guy is going to struggle with the size of Curtis Blades. And what do you know? We saw him dive at Curtis Blade's legs, and when he couldn't move him, Blades just bashed his head in and won the fight there. He's taking on Alexandr Romanov is another guy who's really going to test Almeida's ability to defeat an opponent who's a lot bigger. My thing with Romanov has always been, if he weighs in at 255 plus, it's a fade. Well, he comes in at 265. I'm sure he had to work to get below that heavyweight limit. I just don't really see Romanov having the gas tank to really give Almeida much troubles here. It's going to be tough for him to get Romanov, that big body, to the ground, but Romanov's going to gas. I mean, he got submitted by Alexander Volkov, I'm pretty sure. The guy just doesn't have it. I've seen all I've needed to see from the weigh-ins to tell that Romanov is just not really locked in here. We're taking Almeida by submission. I'm guessing it'll come in the second round when Romanov is completely gassed, which seems inevitable. The featured prelim bout is a middleweight matchup between Cesar Almeida and Roman Kopylov. Sick fight here. Probably the fight outside of the main card, or maybe even outside of the main event, that I'm most excited for. Almeida is a kickboxing vet. You're going to hear Rogan and them say it a million times, but he's got a win over Alex Pereira in kickboxing. Only 5 career fights, but we saw him have his grappling tested versus Dylan Budka and Lucas Fernando in the Dana White Contender Series. And he passed those tests and found a finish over Dylan Budka most recently. This is going to be a striking affair. I don't really see Kopylov trying to mix the grappling in. I think that's I think he's making a mistake if he does, because Kopylov struggles with his gas tank. He's really good for the first couple of rounds, and you know, going into that latter half of the second round, and I think going into the third round, we're going to see Roman really struggle if it gets there. Kopylov's got a lot of power. He's got great kicks. And he can get him up there. And Cesar's not a big guy. Like, both these guys are pretty much around the same size, but the gas tank is really the thing that's... The gas tank of Kopylov, I should say, is the thing that's standing out to me the most. We're taking Almeida to win by a third round KO here. I think if it gets there, we're going to see Kopylov super tired, and I think Almeida's going to have a little bit more left in the tank to put the pressure on and eventually finish Kopylov. So third round KO is the pick. First fight on the prelims is Randy Brown taking on Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. Dos Santos is coming off of a draw to Rinat Fakhretdinov, a fight who, you know, I definitely thought Fakhretdinov was going to roll through him, admittedly. Elizeu is super tough, though. He's kind of been the picture of consistency in the welterweight division. But I do think Fakhretdinov, I was definitely overrating him in that fight. Randy Brown is a much different matchup, though. It's going to be more of a stand-up fight. And Randy Brown is a really tough guy to mess with on the feet. He's super long. He's won 2 in a row since getting KO'd by JDM. I'm pretty sure that was in JDM's backyard, but Dos Santos does not have the same power and boxing as JDM. I just don't see Dos Santos having a path to get much offense off versus Randy Brown. Maybe he'll shoot for a takedown. Maybe he will take him down, but I don't see him really being able to keep him down. I am taking Randy Brown to win this one by decision. Next up, we have Niko Price taking on Alex Morono. This is a rematch of a fight that I do not remember happening. The first fight happening, in that first fight, we did see Niko Price KO Morono pretty much at the horn in a pretty wild fight. But as of late, we've seen Niko Price really struggle. He's won 1 of his last 4. I'm pretty sure most recently was that KO loss to Robbie Lawler, where he got pretty much put out immediately. Morono, on the flip side, has had much more success, but I think he's been fighting the lesser competition of the two. I think Niko Price is a live dog here. I really do. He's already beaten Alex Morono once, even if it was a long time ago. And Morono just doesn't have the power, I think, of the other guys that Niko Price has faced. He's not a power puncher. He's more of a, output type of fighter, and I think that helps Niko Price a lot, a guy who struggles against the heavy hitters. I'm taking Price to win this one by decision as an underdog. I think he's even has a possibility to find a KO here. I just don't. I think you're getting good price on Niko Price, and you know, he already has that mental edge of, oh, I've beaten this guy before, so why not do it again? Next up, we have pretty much the first interesting fight of the main card here. It's Kevin Holland taking on Michal Oleksiejczuk. I guess this is the end of welterweight Kevin Holland. I don't know. I don't know if I totally love this move from him going back to 185. But he's the heavy favorite here. Most people are expecting him to win. I mean, Oleksiejczuk is not going to let Kevin Holland settle into this fight. Like, he's going to push the pressure. The guy moves forward all the time. I don't think his, round one loss to Michel Pereira is going to change his approach at all. Like, that, it's just in his blood. He's an aggressive, forward-moving fighter. But, so for that reason, I don't see this fight going very long. Oleksiejczuk definitely is going to pose a KO threat here, but I think the far more likely outcome is him getting crazy, getting caught, and Kevin Holland wrapping up a sub. So Holland by submission is the pick here. Oleksiejczuk has a few submission losses on his resume, and Holland, for a guy who doesn't have very good wrestling, he does have very good submissions. So I think he finds a way to, just get around Oleksiejczuk's neck or however it's going to be. Our co-main event is a middleweight matchup between Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa. 5-rounder, which benefits Sean Strickland quite a bit. I do think, I've been tooting Strickland's horn if you've been watching for a long time here. I said he was one of the most underrated fighters in the UFC, and I still stand by that. If there's one thing he struggles against, it is power punchers, and Paulo does have a lot of power. That Jared Cannonier fight, for example, we saw a more passive Sean Strickland, I think, than we're used to seeing. He's not putting as much out there because he knows the danger coming his way, even though I think he won that fight. And then obviously the more glaring example is his fight versus Alex Pereira, where he completely underestimated the power and paid the price for it. Paulo is coming off of a close fight with Robert Whittaker, landed a lot of hard punches, almost had one of the craziest KOs probably of all time. If that landing or if that spinning wheel kick puts Whittaker out, I think that is in the list for top 10 greatest KOs ever. You can put it in there immediately. I think Paulo's going to start fast. The head kicks he's going to be looking for the head kicks. I think Sean Strickland, it's up to him to move forward and not really give Paulo the opportunity to get those kicks up there. But if Paulo doesn't get him out of there in the first round or even round and a half, I think Sean is going to run away with this one. The guy's just really tough to even land on. He's just, he just does that, and it's impossible to punch him. So I don't know if Paulo, who's a much lesser striker than a guy like, Adesanya, who has the skills to try and break down the Philly shell, whatever you want to call it, the defensive approach of Strickland. I don't think Costa has the facilities to overcome that. So Sean's just going to overwhelm him. I think he's going to put the pace on, and I think he's going to win a runaway decision here. Just a matter of, can he get out of the first round and a half of, full strength, full juice Costa? I think he will, though. Our main event is, of course, the lightweight matchup between Islam Makhachev and Dustin Poirier. We got a little bit of animosity out of these two. Islam definitely took exception to Poirier's MFer comment. I wouldn't be surprised if it's some language barrier thing where Islam was taking that way too literally, or he was just trying to get any sort of mental edge or, any sort of bulletin board material that he can get on Poirier. Regardless, you know, a lot of people are going to look at the Khabib versus Poirier fight as the blueprint for this. I think we're going to see a much different fight. Islam is not as aggressive of a wrestler as Khabib, for starters. He's not just going to march forward, and if he gets hit, he gets hit. He's just going to dive at your legs. I think he's a much more well-rounded fighter compared to Khabib, and he's going to be more comfortable on the feet here. He's definitely not going to get into any sort of, you know, slug fight, brawling sort of exchanges with Poirier, because that's not a fight that he's going to win. Poirier's just got the slicker hands, but I think we're going to see Islam work the kicks a lot, work his range, and find the spots to bring it in close and eventually take Poirier down. And you know, we saw Poirier survive the pressure of Benoit Saint-Denis, a guy who's definitely not on the same level as Islam grappling-wise, but certainly a strong grappler in his own right. And Poirier, we saw him get taken down and again, but he did just enough to survive, and that ended up being really costly for Benoit, who just ran out of juice. Islam's far too calculated for that, though. I think he's going to be much more opportunistic about when he is shooting for takedowns, and I can see Dustin fighting him off for a couple rounds, but later on in this fight, I think we've just seen Poirier get submitted, and just, you know, he just doesn't really have the ability to fight off the submissions for that long. So I'm taking Islam to win this one by round 3 submission. Just seems like Poirier, there's a threshold of how long he can sort of fight off those submissions before he just kind of doesn't have much left. Yeah, if Islam gets a finish here, I think he's knocking on the door of, you know, some of the better lightweights of all time. I think the gap between him and Khabib is a lot closer than people want to realize. I don't look at that one loss. I don't weigh that as heavily as I think some other people are. I think people obsess over the 0 of Khabib too much, but dude, Islam is so well-rounded. He's got parts of his game that we never saw out of Khabib. And you know, it does seem like he's kind of on the precipice of greatness here. I hope he sticks around in the division. There's plenty of people to fight. Of course, Arman Tsarukyan, I'm looking at him to get the next title shot here, and I think that would be a smart move for Islam to sort of prove that, you know, that fight wasn't as close as maybe some people thought it was. I give Tsarukyan, you know, definitely a strong chance versus Islam Makhachev if they had a rematch. And then, yeah, Poirier, you know, is this his last chance at the belt? I don't really see that. I mean, could he retire? Sure. The guy's probably set for life, but I mean, I think he's more than capable of going out and taking a rematch versus some up-and-comer and knocking him out just like he did Benoit Saint-Denis. So, will be interesting to see the fallout of this fight, no matter who wins it. But yeah, that is the breakdown. We'll catch you on the next one. Thank you for watching the Phone Home MMA Breakdown. Like and subscribe. See you all later.